everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Addict and today I am recording / editing one of the most exciting videos I think I've ever done personally for me. I have fixed my Sims 2 game. So if you've been following my channel for a while, if you've been around since the Pleasant View days, if you have seen my Twitch streams, you will know that for a very long time, there's a moth in here. For a very long time, I have been struggling and fighting a battle against the pink flashing epidemic that affects The Sims 2 on modern computers, and it's a real pain in the butt. You are trying to play The Sims 2, your game turns pink, you try to play with all this custom content because custom content for The Sims 2 is life, and then you just can't play it because your game's just exploding in a ball of pink flashing. I have been dealing with this definitely since I started my channel back in 2019 with Pleasant View, and probably a little bit before that as well, trying to do everything I possibly could, all of the fixes I could find online, customizing NVIDIA settings, customizing my DXVK settings, trying to do everything I possibly could to fight against this pink flashing. But I finally fixed it. I've done it. How did I do it? Well, I said goodbye to Windows. So a little while ago, a friend of mine on my Discord and in my community, Neum Sims, she mentioned to me that she had installed a Linux operating system at the advice of some of her simming friends and tried out her Sims 2 on Linux because she was also dealing with a lot of pink flashing, and according to her friends, The Sims 2 ran a lot better on a Linux operating system. So what exactly is Linux? It's an operating system. Your computer, most computers in this world these days, run on Windows. Otherwise, Macs tend to run on Apple OS or Mac OS. Phones have Android OS or Apple OS. It's an operating system. It's the front end of your computer. It's what takes the information from your motherboard and all your hardware and puts it into something that makes sense. So Linux is a free, open source operating system. You can download it. You do not have to pay for it. And it is open source, which means that anyone can jump in, make edits, upload versions, etc., etc. Linux also has a bunch of different distributions, which we call distros. So you can think of distros as operating systems, which are all fairly similar under the hood, but maybe like different cars. You can think of them like different cars, like Holden, Ford, sorry, I'm thinking Australian brands, Mazda, Toyota, whatever else. Distros are kind of like that. And then all distros also have different versions of distros. So, you know, Windows has Windows 7, 8, 10, 11, whatever. And similar with the distro of Linux, they have different versions. So some of the most popular distros are Linux Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Linux Fedora, and so on and so forth. It gets a little confusing when you first start to look into Linux, and certainly I was very confused and overwhelmed when I first heard about Linux and sort of tried to look into it. But essentially, this has been bouncing around in the back of my head for the longest time, like, hey, maybe I should try a Linux operating system and see how The Sims 2 runs and just try it out. But of course, it's a little scary to think about using a different operating system. I didn't feel like I would know what I was doing. It was all a little bit like, oh, maybe one day I'll give it a go. But then as we were approaching the new year between 2024 and 2025, my friend Rachams, or Charmful, she always talks about making simming resolutions for the new year. And I was thinking about that and I was like, you know what? I would like one of my simming resolutions this year to be to try Linux and to see if it helps with the pink flashing and the crashing. So just around New Year's, my husband set up this old computer of mine, my computer that I used for recording and streaming before I got my new one, which I got a few years ago. And he set it up and he was like, you know, we've just got this computer, we should probably just have it set up, and then if you want to, you can play games with me done in my office. And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. He was like, do you want to just go through everything on here and take anything off that you need to take off? I was like, yeah, sure. And then light bulb, I was like, wait a minute, if we're wiping the system, because my husband wanted to wipe the system, reformat it, I was like, well, if we're wiping the system, honey, would it be okay if I just played around with Linux? And he was like, Linux, why? My husband, by the way, is an IT guy, if you don't know. So I was like, why Linux? And I said, well, apparently, you know, I've heard this about The Sims 2, and hubby does get how important The Sims 2 is to me, so that's good. I said, yeah, apparently it like works really well for older video games, and I've heard it works really well for The Sims 2, and I really want to try it out and, you know, just see what it's like. And he said, yeah, all right, sure. So on this little practice computer, he helped me download and install Linux, and then I downloaded and installed The Sims 2 following a couple of tutorials and guides online, which were a little confusing and a little messy and a little outdated, but it was okay. I got there in the end. I loaded up The Sims 2 with one of my big pink flashy downloads folders, my medieval folder. I loaded it up and it ran like an absolute dream. No pink flashing, no crashing, that it was smooth, load times were faster, everything about it was better, and I just went, oh my God. So then I said to hubby, I played around with it for a little while. I was sharing some streams of it on my Discord and showing my Discord community and being like, guys, like, look at this. Like, this is working so well. This is a hood that I usually stream, and you know, we have to play with neighbors turned off and small view distance, and we still get pink flashing all the time. And I was playing with my view distance to the max. I was playing with neighbors on. I had optimized lot imposters on from the RPC settings, and everything was gorgeous. Everything was perfect. The game was running flawlessly. So then I went, oh my goodness, I need this on my other computer, my main computer in my office. How do we go about doing that? And Paul said, well, we could put a second hard drive or a second SSD into your other computer, and you could install Linux on that, and then you could have a dual boot computer where you've got Windows and Linux, and you can choose which one you want to play with. And I was like, yes, please. So that's what we ended up doing. And I have now gone through the process of installing and setting up The Sims 2 on Linux quite a few times. I've converted quite a few people in my Discord community and my Twitch community already and helped them download and set up Linux. And today I wanted to sit down and make a video tutorial for how to do this if you are interested in trying it out for yourself. So first of all, it is recommended that if you want to install Linux into your computer, you do have a second separate drive. You can dual boot with the same drive. You can make something called a partition on your Windows drive and devote that to a Linux install. However, by all accounts, and I have to say I have not tried this for myself, but what I've heard is that Windows updates will break Linux and vice versa if you have them on the same drive. I'm not going to go too much into technical detail here about how to install a secondary hard drive, but you can check if you have one, and I'll show you how to do that. So if you come to your desktop and you just hit the Windows key or open the search bar and type in disk management, you can open this option here on control panel. And then this is going to show you what drives you have in your computer. So we can see here disk O for me is about 2 terabytes, and this is my Windows boot drive. Then I also installed a secondary disk, which is this one, which is the one I have installed Linux on. And this one here is a removable disk. This is just a USB, which I probably should have taken out before making this video because it's confusing. But if you load up disk management and you see 2 separate disks here, you do have 2 disk drives in your computer. If you only have the one, then you only have one disk drive. And if you want to install Linux, I would heartily recommend getting a second one. It doesn't have to be an internal drive. You can also get an external drive and install Linux onto that. I haven't tried it out for myself yet, but I have a few friends who are thinking about trying it, and I think it should work. I would just want to make sure that your external hard drive was plugged into a very secure USB slot, which there was no way you were going to accidentally unplug it, and you know that it's working really well because internal SSDs are connected by these big fat SATA cables, which are quite fast, quite secure. Obviously an internal drive is probably not going to get knocked out accidentally, and so if you do use an external drive, you probably would just want to be really sure that it was going to be secure and safe, because I can't think of anything worse than like you're there and you're playing your games and doing whatever, and then suddenly the drive comes loose or the USB slot fails, and then like your computer's just gone. But as I said, today's tutorial is not really going to cover how exactly to install a secondary hard drive. If you've got a computer guy or a computer girl or a computer friend, they're probably going to be able to do it for you, or you might want to take your computer to a computer shop or hire a private person to come out to your house and do it. It's very simple, so it's actually a fairly inexpensive and quick procedure. But just to put that out there, you do probably want to have a second drive if you want to try a dual boot system with Linux. In my case, I did need to buy myself a secondary drive, so we went down and bought a 1 terabyte SSD for about $80 from a computer shop, and my husband was able to install it for me. And then I went ahead and installed Linux. So today I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do the installation process of Linux, how to download and set up The Sims 2 and get it running, and show you guys some side-by-sides of my game, my personal downloads folder on Windows compared to on Linux. So as I mentioned before, there are a lot of different versions or distros of Linux that you can try. The first one that I tried was Linux Ubuntu. That was the one we installed on our practice computer. And then my friend Rachem's, who wanted to try the same thing, and it was also one of her simming news resolutions to try Linux, she downloaded and tried Mint, Linux Mint, at the advice of her hubby. And when I saw Rachem's system, I thought it was a little more user-friendly and a little easier to navigate than Linux Ubuntu was. I really liked the file explorer. It seemed like it was a really straightforward process for Rachem's compared to the process I went through, which was a little more complicated. So today I'm going to be taking you guys through the process of getting Mint 22 Cinnamon in particular. It's the latest version of Linux Mint Cinnamon, so it's all going to make a little bit more sense to you in a minute, so just hang in there with me. But there are a lot of different distributions, and to do a tutorial to cover every single different version would just be a little bit too much. So let me just say, we're going to show you Linux Mint today. I've got Linux Mint now. My friends have got Linux Mint. We're all enjoying it quite a lot. So we're going to focus on Linux Mint in particular, because I think if you're coming over from Windows, it's the most straightforward, the most familiar, and the easiest to use. So that's the one I'm going to show you today. But if you do decide to go with a different one, I know my friend Max Playground is using Linux Fedora. And as I said, Linux Ubuntu was pretty good as well. So if you do want to play around with another one, be my guest. The installation process for actually installing Linux and getting The Sims 2 running is basically the same. I just found that I preferred Linux Mint overall. The other thing I will tell you guys is that in the description down below, I'm going to be posting a copy of the guide, the written guide that Rachem's husband made to help you with downloading and installing Linux. The guide below also goes into a lot more detail about how to install a secondary drive into your computer if it's something that you want to try for yourself. So check the description below if you would prefer a text version or a written version with pictures compared to this video, but we're going to go through basically the same process. First of all, I need to start this video with a disclaimer. I take absolutely no personal responsibility for what happens to your computer if you decide to try installing Linux. If you wipe the wrong drive, if you accidentally lose Windows files or Windows registry keys, or you mess with something that I do not cover in this video and it breaks your computer, I am very sorry, but it is not my fault. Please do not come after me. I am a beginner at all of this kind of stuff. I am sharing what I know. There is a lot that I don't know. So if you decide to try this out, please have Google beside you to Google any particular error messages or things that you may come across, and just, yeah, be sure of what you're doing if you decide to give this a go. But let's get to it. So first of all, let me just tell you guys that everything I'm about to show you and explain to you can also be found through a Google search on how to install Linux from USB. Even just this AI overview at the top of the screen here at the Google search is going to give you some good information on what we are going to be doing. Otherwise, you can scroll down a bit and there are actually quite a few web links here that you can follow, such as this one or the one below this one, which is specific to installing Linux Mint, as we are going to be doing today. So step one, we need to download our operating system. So we're going to search for download Linux Mint and click on the top search result here. There are a couple of different options when it comes to Linux Mint. We have the Cinnamon edition, which is the one I'm going to be showing you today. We also have this X-Face one and another one. And yeah, basically it's completely up to you which version you'd like to go for, but so far I've had a really good experience with Mint Cinnamon, so this is the one I'm going to show you in today's video. So once you click on the download link, you then need to scroll down a little bit. It's going to give you some information on the download size, etc. And we need to select a download mirror. Basically, this is just a download source. These are all going to download the same thing, and I think the source you select will just affect the speed of the download. So because I'm in Australia, I got to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and eventually we find an Australian link. So we're going to click on this guy right here and it's going to download. As always, the speed of this will be affected simply by your internet speed. Now you'll notice on this main download page here, there is also some installation instructions. So this is also a really good reference and a really good resource to teach you how to install Linux Mint. And the next thing we're going to need to do is create the bootable media. So if we click on this link here, it's going to give us some instructions on how to do this. It gives us some instructions for if you're already in Linux or if you're on Windows. We will need to download a program called Etcher. Sorry. Yes, there we go. So yeah, just click on the link here. It's going to open in a new tab and you can just hit download Etcher and download that to your computer as well. We want to get the installer for Windows x86 or whatever 64-bit, as we are currently on Windows 64-bit, or if you're on a Mac, you download the Mac version. Once it's finished downloading, just go ahead and hit the XE, and then it is going to open the program slowly but surely on your computer. There we go. Now this little program is really straightforward and easy to use. All you need to do is flash from a file, which we have just downloaded. So we've downloaded Linux Mint 22 Cinnamon 64-bit ISO. We are going to open that file. For me, it's just sitting in my downloads folder. Then we're going to select our target, and this is where you need to have a USB drive. The USB drive, they recommend having at least, like, I think it's 12 gigabytes of space on it. You'll see that the actual ISO file itself is quite small, but I guess just make sure you've got a USB with at least 12 gigabytes of space. I've got one in here with 15.4 gigabytes of space, which I can see here. So I would select this little USB, and then I would hit this flash button. Now, I'm not going to do that today because I've already done this. I've already got myself a little boot drive, but this, after you hit the flash button, it will take a little while. It's going to do some reformatting of your USB. It's going to turn it into a bootable media. That's okay. Just let it run, let it do its thing. And then the next thing you need to do is restart your computer. However, before we do that, we need to check if something called Secure Boot is enabled on our computer. If Secure Boot is enabled on your computer, you will not be able to access your boot drive and boot into anything other than Windows. It's just a security setting that's meant to keep you a bit safer, I think, with booting into Windows. With my first computer that we were installing Linux on, I didn't have to worry about this, but with my office computer, I did have to disable Secure Boot. And out of the friends that I've helped with their Linux installs so far, pretty much every single computer has had Secure Boot enabled, and we've had to go in and disable it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It does involve accessing your system BIOS. Your system BIOS is essentially your motherboard. It's the heart of your computer. So it's a little bit weird if you've never been into your BIOS before, but trust me, it's not that scary. All I will say is don't touch anything if you don't know what it does. Okay, you've been warned. So on Windows, you can open up the taskbar and type in system information. And then when you open this, it will tell you in this list here if Secure Boot is enabled, which we can see if we scroll down right there. Secure Boot state on this computer, this is my laptop, is currently turned on. So if I wanted to install Linux, I would need to turn it off. On most computers, when your computer is starting up, the very first screen it displays will tell you how to access your BIOS and also your boot menu. For most people, if you spam the delete button, it's going to enter BIOS setup. Otherwise, if it's not the delete button, it may be the shift button, or it may be one of the F buttons, F10, F11, F12, or F2. I recommend just Googling the motherboard that you have and just say, you know, how to access BIOS on motherboard MSI, for example, or Intel motherboard. It's going to tell you. Otherwise, you can just try the delete button, and I think for most computers that'll get you into your BIOS. Just make sure that you're quick about it, especially if you've got a computer that boots up quickly. Like when I was doing this on my laptop, I was like, come on, BIOS, because it was just booting so fast I couldn't get in there. So make sure you're pressing that button as quick as you can. On my laptop it was the F2 button, and yeah, eventually we got in. So yeah, this is honestly where things are just going to look a little bit different depending on what type of motherboard you have. This is the BIOS for my Beast computer, my office streaming computer, and this is what my BIOS looks like. It first loads up in easy mode, and if I hit F7 to transition into advanced mode, this is what it looks like in advanced mode. I'm going to click on settings, and I'm going to come in here to security, and from what I've seen so far, most people's secure boot option is hidden inside security. Mine for some reason was hidden inside Windows OS configuration, so once I click on that, then I can see this option here for secure boot. I can click on this, and then I can see a little drop down toggle for enabled or disabled. So that is how I went ahead and disabled secure boot on my computer so that I could install Linux. And then just to show you a slightly different version, I apologize for the crappy photos. This is my laptop, and my laptop didn't have an option for me to take screenshots like my other computer did. But in my laptop's BIOS, I came into more settings, and in the information, I could see that Secure Boot is turned on. When I went into security, I then had the option to disable Secure Boot. Once you've done that, you should be able to plug in your boot medium, your USB drive that you have created, restart your computer and then enter into your boot menu. Again, this is usually going to be one of the F buttons. On one of my computers it was F8, on one of my computers it was F11, on my friend's computer it was F10, and my other friend's computer it was F12. Just try some F buttons. If it doesn't list it for you, or if you can't find it on Google, try spamming some F buttons until you get a boot menu that looks something like this, and you should be able to see a list of devices that you can boot from, and then you can select the USB option. And if you're really not sure what to press and you don't see anything relating to USB, but you do see something relating to Ubuntu, like on my list here, try pressing on one of the Ubuntu options. This one is a little confusing because obviously my computer already has Ubuntu installed, but if it didn't, I think there would only be one Ubuntu option and I would select that. Alright everybody, so welcome to installing Linux Mint. I am doing this on a virtual machine on my actual Linux computer, so it's going to look a little bit small and weird, but on your computer it's going to look fairly similar. So we're going to just start in Linux Mint. Okay, so when you first boot up into Linux Mint, you're going to get a pop-up about if you're connected to the internet or not. I have a LAN cable wired connection to this computer, otherwise you'll get a pop-up something about your Wi-Fi. All you want to do is come over to here and click on Install Linux Mint. Let that open up. All right, and so this is going to guide us through the installation process. First step, choose your language. Second step, choose your keyboard layout. Now, I did not actually know until recently that you guys in England have a different keyboard layout to those of you in America and fellow Australians. We use the same keyboard layout as America, but yeah, make sure you select the correct keyboard layout. This option gives you the choice to install multimedia codecs or not. It's totally up to you whether you want to install these now or install them later. If you don't install them during the setup of Linux Mint, you can always install them at a later date. I just hit, yeah, sure, why not, and continue. Okay, and now, so for me and my little virtual machine here, my virtual machine only has access to one hard drive, which currently doesn't have anything installed on it. If you're installing Linux Mint onto a computer with another hard drive already in your computer, you're going to have a third option, but I'm going to go ahead and select Erase Disk and install Linux Mint. This is probably the scariest part and where you want to be really sure of what disk you're installing Linux onto. Obviously, for me in this case, I only have one option, so it's not going to give me any options for which disk I want to select. I think it said continue rather than install now. It gave me a drop-down menu on the next screen and the ability to select which drive I was installing it onto. So just make sure that you're really, really sure of what drive you want to install Linux onto. Like a good way to tell them apart is perhaps if you have like a 1 terabyte drive and a 2 terabyte drive, and you know that you're installing it onto the 1 terabyte drive. Or you might need to just make sure you know the name or the hardware of your drive that you're installing it onto and make sure you select the right one. I've also heard of people who have their Windows drive completely disconnected when they're installing Linux. This is just a pop-up to tell me the way it is going to partition my disk, which is fine. I'm just going to leave that as is. I'm happy to let it do everything automatically. I don't need to set anything up manually, which is this option here. You can create your own partitions if you want to. Next screen is to select your time zone. And then here we can give ourselves and our computer our name. So I'm going to call myself T, and I'm going to call my computer T-Nux. T-Linux, yep. My username is going to be T, that's fine. And I'm going to choose a password. I'm going to make it something really, really easy that I'm going to be able to remember and type in quickly. And that is because Linux asks for your password quite a lot. You want to set a password that you're not going to forget. You want to write it down or put it on a sticky note or something. Put it in your little password saver app. Make sure it is one that you're not going to forget. And yeah, I recommend keeping it short, sweet, and simple unless you're really worried about security. And I'm going to set mine to log in automatically, but you can also have it so it requires your password to log in when you boot into Linux. I'm going to hit continue. And what it's going to do now is it's going to copy over the installation files. So if you were running off of a boot drive USB, it's going to copy over the installation files from there. Oh, and of course, I will also say that the installation process for Linux Ubuntu, when I did that one initially, was exactly the same. There was very little difference between those two distros. Okay, so then after it's finished copying over the files, it starts the installation process. And again, the speed of this is going to depend just on your system specs, how fast your drive is, how much RAM you've got, that kind of thing. Hopefully it won't take us too long here. In my experience, it hasn't taken very long at all. When I've been helping friends with installing Linux onto their PCs lately, I think everyone's been a bit surprised by how quick it actually has been. You can also see what it's doing at the time, and you can see at the moment it's unpacking something called LibreOffice. LibreOffice is a free suite of apps that are very similar to Microsoft Office. So, you know, Microsoft Word, Libre, Word or whatever it is. Microsoft Excel has Libre Excel basically. And from the little bit of the LibreOffice suite I've used, I found it pretty good. It's pretty user friendly. I have been able to open all of my existing spreadsheets. You guys know me, I love my spreadsheets. And I've been able to open them all on the Libre version of Excel with no problems. All the formulas work, nothing seems broken. So yeah, really good free alternative to Microsoft Office. And I believe you can also run it on Windows if you want to. So that's nice. And it comes pre-installed with Mint 22 Cinnamon. Oh, there we go. So we've got, yeah, LibreOffice Writer, LibreOffice Calc, LibreOffice Impress, LibreOffice Draw, and LibreOffice Space. So those are some of the Office apps that just popped up on my screen. I don't even really know what they're called yet, but I'm getting there. In general, so far, I found the only two programs that I really wanted to have running on Linux that haven't run for me are Photoshop, which is a sad loss for me. Linux does support GIMP, if you are familiar with GIMP or if you use GIMP. I'm not a big fan of GIMP, but you know, that's fine. And then the other one is my editing software, but that's okay. Right, so installation has finished. You can now continue testing Linux, or if you restart the computer, we will boot into our actual installation of Linux Mint. So yeah, you can play around, you can have a look around it, test it out, but I'm just gonna hit restart now. Your computer's going to restart and you're going to get a little message pop up in a moment here to remove the boot medium and then press enter. There we go. Or sorry, remove the installation medium and press enter. So if you're booting off of a USB drive, you would remove that USB drive and then press enter. And then what you should see if you are running a dual boot system, sorry, my little virtual machine here has crashed, but if you are running a dual boot system, the next thing you should see is a little menu of choices that will pop up, and it will be a list of available boot options. So you should see an option to boot into Linux Cinnamon, and you should see an option to boot into Windows if you have still got Windows installed on your computer as well. But when we load back into Linux, we get this welcome message pop up, and you can toggle this on off. Once you read through it, I do recommend toggling it off, otherwise it'll show up every time you load into Linux. So it says, you know, welcome, blah, 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 let's go. And then it gives you some ideas of what you can do to customize your system and take a look around. So desktop colors is kind of fun. You can load into here and basically you can customize everything about Linux. It's pretty flexible. You can choose if you want light mode, dark mode, mixed mode, and then if you go into advanced settings, you can select different little arrows that you want. You can select how you want your buttons to display, you know, what you want it to look like, what colors you want them to be. You can select what color and what style you want your icons to be for your folders and your desktop as well, what you want that to look like. You can customize all of that. And then you can also add extra themes onto Mint, which will completely customize your desktop even further. So play around with that when you feel like it, when you have time. I'm just going to set a few little options here and then close out of that. The next one here talks about system snapshots. So this is an inbuilt system backup tool that Linux comes with. So you can set this up to back up your computer once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever you want. And then you can always restore your computer to its previous working state. So that is a cool idea to set up. Then we have Driver Manager. This is a great thing to go into, and I'm going to show you Driver Manager on my actual Linux machine here, because this little fake one doesn't have any graphics card. But on my actual Linux machine, if we go into Driver Manager, it's going to pop up. It's going to look for drivers for a little while. This will take a little while the first time you load it. And by default, what I've found with most people is that it has this Xserver, Xorg video, Nuvo driver selected. But obviously I am changing that immediately to be the recommended NVIDIA driver because I have an NVIDIA graphics card. Everybody I've helped with installations of Linux so far has been running an NVIDIA graphics card. So I'm not sure exactly what this would look like if you had an AMD card card, for example. But basically, I think just come in here and select the recommended driver for your machine, and that will be a good idea. After you change which driver you are running, you will be prompted to restart your computer. So you will have to reboot after doing that. Then we have the fourth little pop-up here, which is the update manager. And this is a good thing to look into. When you first install Linux, it does not install completely up to date. So you want to come over here to install updates. Oh, we'll press OK. It's going to look for updates. And then you can see there are all of these updates that your machine wants to install. So it's also asking if you want to switch to a local mirror. Local mirrors are usually faster than packages, blah, blah, blah. This is asking about where you want to download your files from, like what source. I've just left mine as default because initially I changed mine, but then I was having errors with downloading packages. So yeah, just leave that as default that's my advice anyway. But yeah, so you can go ahead, install all your updates, and then it'll again depend on your system specs for how long that will take. Immediately it's asking me to authenticate with my password. So I'm going to go T123. As I said, you will be prompted to enter your password quite often with Linux. So make sure you know what your password is. If you're a bit shaky on it or you think you're going to forget it, it won't be a good time. While this is running in the background on my little virtual machine here, I'm going to show you on my actual computer the terminal, the Linux terminal. And this is essentially Windows command prompt, but in Linux it tends to be a little bit more heavily used and a little bit more important. And if you want to check if your system needs updating, you can use the update manager, as we have seen here. The other thing you can do is use the terminal. And what you can type in is sudo, which is essentially Linux speak for admin. So sudo apt update. And this is going, oh, and then you need to enter your password. Oh boy, what was that? There we go. It's going to scan my entire system and see if there are any updates that need to be installed. If there were, it would tell me that I had a number of packages that were available to be upgraded. And then I could type in sudo apt, or even, I don't even have to type in sudo because once you've entered your password, once you're good, I could type in apt upgrade and hit enter, and then it would go through and upgrade any packages that needed to be upgraded. So that is just another way of checking and installing updates on your PC when you're running Linux. But otherwise, yeah, you can always use this update manager program too. Well, this is normal too. I've found that every time I've helped someone install Linux or done it myself, you get a pop-up just for a second that you disconnect from your internet source, and then it goes away and it reconnects. I think it's just updating your like drivers or something or other. So don't worry too much about that. It should be fine. Alrighty, so it has finished installing all the updates it wanted to, and it's now telling me a reboot is required. So fantastic. I'm going to close out of that. Close out of that. We'll come back to this in a moment and reboot my little virtual Linux machine here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted restart. There we go. Okay, so we've rebooted, and once again we have the same welcome pop-up, except this time it's in dark mode because I selected dark mode. So then we can go the next one into system settings, so you can launch system settings and customize further. You can also look at firewall, and we can go into software manager, which is where we can install other apps and things like that. Before we do that though, we're going to do something else, and that is more fiddling around in the terminal. Okay, so the way that Windows programs run on Linux is through something called Wine. Wine is not a Windows emulator. That's what they call themselves anyway. And so one of the first things that we want to get set up here is a system-wide installation of Wine, which is going to help your Sims 2 to run better. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that it is not already installed on this little PC. And you can see it's not. Command wine is not found, but it can be installed with sudo apt install wine. Perfect. Sudo apt install wine. Password. Oh gosh, my numpad is being weird. I think it's like something to do with the fact that I'm running a virtual machine. It's going to tell me everything that it's going to install. Sounds perfect. Let's go. And slowly but surely, this is going to install a system-wide Wine installation. And I do recommend this is the easiest and most straightforward way of downloading and installing Wine. You can also go on Firefox on the internet, and you can literally search, let me see, so install Wine Linux Mint 22. And then there is this handy dandy link here with some pretty detailed instructions on how to get Wine set up with downloading from official repositories. This is all kind of complicated. It's not too bad, but honestly, I just recommend typing into the terminal like we did, sudo apt install wine. I've found that that works really, really well. So cool, makes it easier. I don't know if this is like a recent addition to Linux that you can just do it this way, but seems easy enough to me. Okie doke. Once that's done, I'm going to tell you guys to run another command, which is apt install mono complete. This is an addition to Wine, which is going to help more Windows programs to run on your Linux machine with more relative ease. And so I highly recommend also installing this. Though I will say, strictly speaking, for the purpose of getting The Sims 2 running, I don't actually know how necessary these two steps are. I just think it's probably a good idea. I am still learning a lot about all of this. I'm still testing things. I'm still figuring things out. But it seems to me that things work better when I run these two commands compared to when I don't. All right, wonderful. The last thing we're going to type into the terminal is wine, oops, got it selected, wine CFG, wine config. And we're going to run this, and it is going to open up a little interface and basically just complete the installation of Wine onto our computer. And this shows you our Wine configuration. So our default settings is that everything is going to be emulated to Windows 10. This is basically the same as running in compatibility mode on Windows, but so you can set it to whatever operating system you want. I'm just going to leave that as is, and then we're going to close out of that. Now let's move on to actually getting The Sims 2 downloaded and installed. So to do that, you're going to want to open up your menu and type in software, and then open up Software Manager. First time you load Software Manager, it does take quite a while to do this part, generating the cache, which is going to generate all of the potential apps that you can download onto your system. There is a lot of them. And yeah, this is my preferred way so far of installing software. With everything on Linux, you can install pretty much everything via the terminal. Sometimes you can just download things from the internet and then install them via the terminal, or you can use something like Software Manager. So we can install Blender, we can install GIMP, we can install Discord through this Software Manager as well. One of the first things I installed was Discord, of course, because then I can talk to people. And then we can also install OBS. We can do everything. But what we need for The Sims 2 is a program called Lutris. I don't know if it's pronounced Lutris or Lutris. I sort of tend to go in between the two, but whatever. Oh, there are two options here. The one is rated 3.5 stars, and this one, the flat hub version, is rated 4.2 stars. This is the one I absolutely recommend you go for. There is also a variety of ways of downloading and installing Lutris onto your system, but I'm going to recommend doing it this way. Just make sure you've got the flat hub version selected and hit install. It's going to tell us all the additional things that it's going to install. We like this. It's going to install its own version of Wine, its own version of Wine Mono, and another little thing called Wine Gecko. That is all fantastic. This is all things that we want. So we're going to hit continue and let that do its thing. The other way that you can download and install Lutris is if you go to, again, your internet browser and you go download Lutris, then you can come into here. Select your Linux distro. We are on Linux Mint, so we're going to go to this GitHub release, and then you can see you can download the latest version from here. However, the reason I do not recommend downloading from here is because when I have done it this way, the Lutris program has been missing essential files. In particular, it's missing some of the 32-bit compatible files to actually run games that were originally coded for 32-bit, which includes The Sims 2. So I don't recommend downloading from here just because I have run into a lot of issues with this. It is fixable. If you download it from here, you can always install the extra dependencies that you need, again, via your terminal. It's quite easy to do, but yeah, it's just been more complicated for me when I've downloaded it this way as compared to installing through the Software Manager. Okay, and from here we can go ahead and launch into Lutris. And then when it opens up, you're going to see over on the side here, it's downloading, extracting, and installing a bunch of files. This is all brilliant. This is what we want. This is going to run our games for us. So just let that do its thing. Right, so once you've got your Lutris downloaded and installed, I do recommend restarting your system and then reopening Lutris. I found that there's one thing that doesn't quite install properly until you reboot your system. Linux loves a reboot. If your Linux system is ever being weird, just turn it off and on again, seriously. It just solves a multitude of problems. But so after you've got that installed and running, you come into Mozilla Firefox. This is a very familiar browser for those of us who've not been a big fan of using Google Chrome while they're live streaming because Google Chrome is a resource hog. Anyway, come to your internet browser and type in Lutris Sims 2. The top link is the one you want to click on right here. We are going to scroll down a little bit and there's a couple different versions we can download. I highly, highly recommend downloading the OSAB TS2 Starter Pack version and hitting install. It is going to ask you if you trust Lutris to open the Lutris link. Yes, we do. Please open our link, dear Lutris. Then we're going to get a pop-up saying, do you want to install The Sims 2? Yes, yes we do. We're going to hit the install button. It is going to tell us where it is going to install it, the installation directory. This is known as our wine prefix. So this is going to be our little mini fake Windows system that has The Sims 2 in it. So you can call this whatever you want. Don't change the home T games. Those are your actual folders. And then this last bit is the folder that it's going to create. So you can leave it as is or you can rename it just to Sims 2. It's totally up to you. It's also up to you if you want to create a desktop and an application shortcut or not. Yeah. I recommend it, why not? Then it's going to download the installation file. It is also going to download GE Proton, which is something that we really, really want because that is what is called a runner for running Windows games. Another word you could use for it would be emulator. But yeah, Proton is an emulator essentially, and that is the one that I have had the most success with running The Sims 2. So yeah, we're going to be downloading the web installer from GitHub, absolutely, and we're going to leave it there and say install. You can also download the web installer yourself and then select a local file and then select the file on your computer and install from there rather than just downloading and installing from the internet. I've found that it makes absolutely no difference. So the first thing it's going to do is create our new wine prefix, which we called Sims 2, or yours might be the default of The Sims 2. Very different. And it's going to open up a console. It's going to tell us it's doing a bunch of stuff, which is fine. Don't worry about any of this. Just let it do its thing. And then ta-da, we get a little pop-up, Sims 2 Starter Pack Web Installer, fantastic. And we're going to hit next. Now it does actually tell us here as well, use the default component page settings when installing. You may also choose to enable the clean neighborhood template option. Do not check the box for DXVK as this is already handled by Lutris. This will all make sense in a little minute. So it's going to give you a destination folder for install. This is going to look very familiar to us Windows users. It looks like very much like a Windows file path. This is perfect. Leave it as is, hit next. And then here are our installation options. The part where it says leave the default components selected is essentially this top section, graphical fixes, tweaks, and dependencies. You don't want to touch any of that. Leave DXVK unticked because as this said, DXVK is handled by Lutris, which is I think one of the reasons that Sims 2 runs so well on Linux. And then it is up to you if you want to also download and install the store and pre-order bonus content that Maxis gave us when they released The Sims 2 originally, and or the clean hood templates. I mean, I recommend definitely installing the clean hood templates personally. I don't know why you wouldn't, but whatever. I do recommend unticking start menu desktop shortcut because we don't actually have a desktop for our little fake windows here, so there's absolutely no point in leaving that ticked. So probably just untick that. And once yours looks how you want it to look with these selected or not, you can go ahead and hit install. Then it is going to start downloading the Sims 2 Starter Pack, and this download can really vary in speed. It depends on your internet connection, of course, but it also, I have found it depends on how happy or unhappy GitHub is on a particular day because we're downloading from GitHub right now, and one night I was trying to download these files and it was just slow as pickles. Like I was getting like 200 kilobyte a second download speed instead of like, at the moment it's a bit average. It's not the fastest it can be. And other times I've seen it download at like 60 megabytes a second download speed. So I don't even know, it seems that GitHub is a bit temperamental. Just leave it to do its thing and it shouldn't, hopefully shouldn't take too long. Now, from this point in the tutorial, I'm actually going to switch over to a different computer. So because this little virtual machine is not actually capable of running a video game, it has no graphics card. So I will see you guys over on a slightly different looking piece of footage in just a minute. Righto, so skipping ahead just a minute, my download here is just finishing up. It is installing the last things, and there's going to be a pop-up that Graphics Rules Maker will now open. I've seen this work sometimes, and I've seen this not work sometimes. Just hit OK, skip through it. If Graphics Rules Maker happens to open for you, fantastic. If it doesn't, don't stress. I'll show you how to manually open it afterwards. In this case, it did not open for me, so I just hit OK, and then the download finished doing its thing. And once it's completely finished, you'll have the option to open and configure the Sims 2 RPC settings. For those of you who are familiar with RPC, it's a tool by Lazy Duchess. You're also going to get this pop-up that you need to install Wine Gecko. Just hit install. So yeah, RPC is a tool by Lazy Duchess. It's very helpful whether you're on Windows or on Linux. You have some great options here. You can unrestrict zodiac sign so that personalities are not linked to zodiac anymore. You can change how much redesigning costs, set it to window borderless, and in graphics tab you can also, on Linux in my experience, up your lot imposter settings and also enable lot ocean reflections. I recommend at the end just hit save settings, don't hit save and play, because there's a few more things we may want to configure before hitting play. But yeah, now we can see it has completed. We have the option to close or launch the game. So hooray, The Sims 2 is officially installed for us. That is wonderful. At this point, you can go ahead and hit play and just see if it runs. If it doesn't, don't stress too much. There might be a few things that we need to configure, as I said. If it does open, hooray, fantastic. We're good to go. And in this case, it did open for me first try. But yeah, at this point, you can let the game load in. It shouldn't take too long, depending on what options you ticked in the installation thing. You may have the store and pre-order bonus content in the game that you want to take a look at. It's going to have all the default neighborhoods, of course, and they're all going to be the clean hood templates, which is fantastic. In this case, I did download the CEPs and everything. So here's our game, clean and fresh, and we love to see it. But of course, in my installation here, Graphics Rules Maker did not actually successfully open. So in order to open it, I'm going to come down here to this menu. Yours may have the little image of a wine glass with an arrow, and I'm going to open up Graphics Rules Maker manually and see if I can run it. Graphics Rules Maker in this case is in our C drive program files, the Sims 2 starter pack folder. In here, we go into bin, and then it should be the top. There we go. The top option is the Graphics Rules Maker.exe. Gonna hit OK and see if anything opens. Let's just wait a moment. Alright, so unfortunately we've got this error message that no game plugins have been found and we need to reinstall the application. I've seen this happen about 50% of the time in my own experience with my own system and then helping other people with theirs install it. So first of all, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to delete the Graphics Rules Maker folder from inside my installation. And then yeah, we're going to re-download it and reinstall it using the same basic process. So into Firefox we go. I'm just going to Google search Sims 2 Graphics Rules Maker, and then we are going to hit this top search result right here and re-download the file. I'm going to let it download. It's going to be sitting in my downloads folder, and then we're going to go back into Lutris, back into this menu, and once again hit this arrow and say run exe inside wine prefix. Going to navigate over to where it downloaded, which is somewhere in here. Oh my goodness. Graphics Rules Maker, it's somewhere here. There it is. Okay, yes. So I'm going to open this .exe, and this time hopefully it's going to run. So we'll just give it a moment to load. Now, one quirk with Linux that really annoys me, and I'm still trying to work out how to fix it, is that sometimes a new window will open behind the windows you already have open. Try to keep an eye in the taskbar on how many instances of Lutris are running, and then you should be able to alt tab or move windows around so you can see what's happening. But yeah, it's open for us, so I'm just going to go through the installer. I'm going to leave everything as default. I'm going to install all the game plugins. I'm going to let it install where it wants to install, and then we're going to hit finish, and this time it is going to open for us. I am sure of it. And here it is. So you can go ahead and just select Sims 2 from the drop down menu. You will also want to select the Sims 2 body shop, hit auto detect, save files. Sorry, everything was opening for me on my second screen, so it was very annoying. But yeah, hit save files, add your graphics card to the config, hit yes, and then you're good to go. Some people have said that running Graphics Rules Maker on Linux is not even necessary. Some people have found it to be very necessary. My friend Adam was, his game was not happy until he ran Graphics Rules Maker. But once you've done all this, you can save the files and your game should be good to go, and we can move on to the next stage of setting it up. So just to show you guys as well a little bit more about how your game installs on Linux, your games install through Lutris in your home games folder, which you can find here. Anything you install will be in here under its own wine prefix. Our wine prefix on this computer was just called The Sims 2. If we come into Drive C, in Program Files x86, The Sims 2 Starter Pack, this is where your installation files are. So this is where you're going to put files relating to Clean UI. This is where you're going to find, Fun with Pets, SP9, TSBin, etc. In this file explorer, you can add bookmarks. This is the Nemo file explorer that comes with Linux Cinnamon, and so I recommend adding a bookmark for these key locations. In terms of your EA Games The Sims 2 folder, where you're going to put your downloads and custom cameras and everything, that's going to be in Drive C, Users, your username, Documents, EA Games. And so once again, I recommend adding this to your bookmarks, and then you can easily navigate around your file explorer. At this point, it is worth talking about what files from your installation folder you may want to bring over to this new install. So as I mentioned, if you are using Clean UI, you're going to need to bring over your UI files and put them into each individual folder. If you're running The Sims 2 RPC and you have custom mods, you're going to want to bring those over too. So here's one of the UI folders, and yeah, you may want to bring over your Clean UI files. Just copy paste all of the UI files over from your other install into here. And then next of all, we may want to look into the base folder, Double Deluxe Base, TS Data, Res, and then in Catalog, probably will want to copy over your CZEP extras folder if you have a lot of extra CZEPs, as well as your scripts folder if you use Scriptorium and you have custom walls, fences, whatever, you're going to want to copy over that entire folder, just the whole thing. In bins, oh, not in here actually, sorry, back in Fun with Pet, SP9, TS bin, not TS bin, sorry, TS Data, Res, Catalog, bins. You may have some custom files in here as well. If you use the Rug Fixes mod by Huge Lunatic, that needs to go into there. And then the other file that I have found I needed to bring over was also my global props.ini file, because I have testing cheats enabled true in my global props.ini file as well. I also have a lighting mod, so I also needed to copy over all of my lighting folders from each and every install as well. Then you're probably going to want to copy over your entire My Documents EA Games folder as well. I copied over all of my Sims 2 backups and put them onto the new installation. So then I could just play with my downloads folders. It also has my custom cameras. Hello, Deli. As well as, of course, my user startup.cheat file, which is also essential for my gameplay. It has all my cheat shortcuts. And if you're interested in how to set up a user startup cheat file, I got a video on that here on the channel. At this point, your game is set up, ready to go, completely playable, and is probably going to work really, really well. However, I want to show you some bonus tips for if you want to also use things like The Sims 2 Hood Checker and extra peripheral programs for The Sims 2 here on Linux. So you're going to want to come down to the menu and open up Wine Tricks, select the default wine prefix, which is going to be your Sims 2 wine prefix, and then once again, things are opening behind everything else. You're going to get this pop-up saying, do you want to send information? It's up to you. You can say yes or no. Then you're going to want to come up here to install a Windows DLL or component, and also to install a font. First of all, I'm going to install some Windows fonts. I'm going to come in, I'm going to install Core Fonts. I'm going to also install Calibri, because that is sort of the default Windows font these days. And I'm also going to install, there is another suite of fonts here somewhere, this one here. I'm going to install all of these Windows fonts into my game, into my Linux install, because this will make things look a lot prettier. So far I have tested a bunch of peripheral Sims 2 programs on Linux. I have managed to get Hood Checker working, Lot Adjuster working, Hat Conflict Detection Utility. I've got the Wardrobe Reorganizer. I've got Build by Reorganizer, Tools by Pick and Mix. I've been able to get most of these extra programs running. The two that have been the most tricky have been SimPE. I've got it running, but it's a little buggy. And the Clean Pack installer, I've also got that running, but there's a few workarounds we need to be aware of. When you're installing things with Winetricks, you're going to get a ton of these pop-up warning messages about 64-bit prefixes and 32-bit architecture and blah-de-blah-de-blah. Just ignore them. Skip through. It's fine. You're also going to get warnings about things terminating programs that are running in your prefix that you're installing stuff into. Again, do not worry about any of these warning messages. Just let it do its thing. It's up to you if you want to hit OK, or if you just leave it there, it'll disappear eventually anyway. And yeah, you're going to get these pop-ups every time Winetricks is doing something. So right now it's installing all of those fonts that I told it to install, and every time it installs one, I'm getting one of these little pop-ups. You will know that it has completed when this window reopens back into Winetricks. So next of all, we're going to go into Install Windows DLL or Component. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of essential Windows components that you're going to want to have in order to run these little extra tools and programs. Now the ones I've got running are like CC Merger and CC Compressor. They are also totally functional on Linux. First one is D3XD9, D3DX9, whatever it is. Install that, tick it. Then we're also going to scroll down a little bit further to the .NET section, and we are going to install .NET 20 to start off with. And then we're also afterwards going to install .NET 40. .NET 40 is the one that is essential to run SimPE. If you don't have .NET 40 installed in your Winetricks menu, then SimPE will not run for you. I've also gone ahead and installed some of the later .NET frameworks too. On my main computer, I've got like .NET 45 and .NET 48 installed as well. And yeah, these basically everything inside this section of Winetricks, the DLL and components section, are little parts of Windows that you can install as you need them in order to run extra programs. The .NET frameworks do take a little while to install, but once you see that Winetricks menu pop up again, just verify that everything's installed correctly, so you'll know if they are still ticked that they have installed correctly, and all of mine are. There is a fourth one that is also recommended, which is VC Run 6. This one also helps Windows programs to run, so I forgot about this one before, but I'm going to go ahead, tick it, and install it, and hopefully that'll work. Another one is this Oliot 32, and that will help just reduce the amount of error messages you get in your logs when you are trying to run these little programs. The error messages are harmless, it's just it helps with rendering certain graphics, I think. Okay, now that that's done, we are ready to install some of these little extra peripheral programs. So to exit out of Winetricks, I'm just going to hit cancel twice. Not okay, I always make that mistake. There we go. Come back into Lutris, and we're going to install a couple of extra tools. We're going to come up and add a locally installed game. We're going to give it a name, and for this example, I'm going to set up Hood Checker. And for the runner, select a runner from the list. I'm going to hit Wine. Runs Windows games, that is what we want. The next thing we need to put in is the executable. And so you're going to download it and browse to where you have downloaded it. And then we are going to select the exe. As always, I recommend having a folder called Sims Tools, which is full of all of your tools that you want. So I'm going to put Hood Checker in here, fresh off of a download, because I thought I had it downloaded, but I didn't. So we're just going to extract it all into here. Sims Tools, Hood Checker, and extract. There we go. So now that's in there. And then, yeah, back into Lutris. I'm going to browse to that .exe, Hood Checker, hoodchecker.exe. And then the really important part of this is the wine prefix. So you need to enter the wine prefix in this section here, and it needs to be the same as your Sims 2 wine prefix. So if we go into Lutris, hit right click, configure, game options, this is the Sims 2 wine prefix. I'm going to copy that, save, and I'm going to paste it in here, save. So now they're going to be running within the same wine prefix, or you could say the same fake windows. And once I hit play, the Sims 2 Hood Checker is going to open. If I browse to the next folder, you can see all of my neighborhoods are there being recognized and picked up completely by Hood Checker. And as far as my testing goes, it works really, really well. Another one I will show you guys is SimPE. So as I mentioned before, SimPE must have the .NET 40 framework installed, or .NET 45 or .NET 48 in order to run. I'm fairly sure it is .NET 40 which is required. So make sure you've got that one installed and running. And then yeah, if you want to, you can also install these extra ones. But we are going to do this the exact same way as we did Hood Checker. Add a locally installed game, give it a name, and I'm going to call this one New SimPE. This is the latest version of SimPE that came with the Road Tools update, the best SimPE update in the history of SimPE updates, in my opinion. Gonna select wine as the runner. I'm going to put in the wine prefix again, The Sims 2, and then I have a fresh copy of it downloaded here. So I'm going to browse to the exe, simpe.exe, save. And now we can run SimPE. Now SimPE, as I mentioned, it has some quirks, it has some issues. It doesn't work as well as it does on Windows, but for basic SimPE functions, it works okay. The main issue I'm having with SimPE right now is this error message here, this image type is not supported error message, and it's something to do with TGA image files. I get a bunch of these, so I just skip through them. I close. SimPE will open regardless, thankfully. It's just that, yeah, it seems to have some errors with rendering certain pictures. Older versions of SimPE, which don't have as many images, you don't get all of these error messages, but this new U-Butte latest version does. But yeah, otherwise another quirk is that sometimes I find these menus, you think you've clicked on something, but then the menu will close and it doesn't actually click on it. But yeah, I can browse my neighborhoods. And then the third quirk I will mention is that when you click on something to open it in plugin view, it won't open unless you middle click or right click. So yeah, that was something that I had to post on Reddit about. I'm like, why is plugin view not working? And then so I was like, oh, you need a middle click or right click. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But yeah, little quirk with running SimPE on Linux. Oh, there's another one of my image type not supported error messages. I'm trying to fix this. I am posting on threads and Reddits and help forums and seeing if I can figure it out. But yeah, middle click to open things in plugin view will be your best friend. Next, I'll show you Sims 2 Pack Clean Installer, and this one, I managed to get it set up and working perfectly one time, and every other time I've tried, I've failed. But basically, you go ahead, download Sims 2 Pack Clean Installer, you can add it into Lutris the same way you add other games into Lutris, and it will open, and it's great. The issue I'm having is that when I actually download a Sims 2 Pack file, I can't manage to make it open with Clean Pack Installer. If you double click on it, if you say open with Sims 2 Pack Clean Installer, it just won't work for me. It's driving me absolutely batty. I am trying desperately to fix it, but there is a workaround, which is that after you have installed the Sims 2 Pack Clean Installer, what you do is you run an exe inside this wine prefix, select your Sims 2 Pack file, and then it will open correctly via Lutris and install into your game. So a little bit of a quirk, little bit of a workaround, but it does work one way or another. So guys, that's the process. That's how we download and install Linux. That's how we download and install The Sims 2. That's how we set up peripheral programs. Peripheral programs might not even matter to you. You might never use CC Merger or Compressor or SimPE or any of that, but I thought I'd just show you anyway. And now, the question is why? Why would we bother? Why would we go through all that to run The Sims 2? Let me show you. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Let me show you some side-by-sides, okay? So I will show you what my medieval folder looks like on Windows compared to on Linux. Bearing in mind, this is the exact same hardware. This is on the exact same computer. They're on the same type of SSD, same graphics card, same everything. Having done everything I know of on Windows to try to make the game run without pink flashing, this is what it looks like on Windows. Pink everywhere, pink explosion. It is horrifying. This is the lot. This is... oh my goodness, like, have you guys seen so much pink in your lives? I don't even know. It's terrible. And like, just to show you all the settings that I'm running right now so that we can compare with Linux, I am trying to turn neighbors on. I'm trying to have extra large view distance, because usually I play with neighbors off to try to help with the pink. Try to have extra large view distance and fade distance off. Let's go back to the neighborhood. And this is pre-recorded footage, but like, oh my goodness, just wait. Just wait for this. I know what's gonna happen. Hey buddy, you back again, huh? Is it flashing? Oh no. So yeah, that's my neighborhood right there. It's not a pretty sight. Right, so here's Medieval on Linux. Now this is running with optimized lot imposters on. I haven't regenerated all of them yet. I've regenerated about half of them. I'm going to attempt to load into the same lot as we did before, but just to show you, these are the game options I'm running with graphically, and then in here as well, I forgot to say this before, but catalog displays custom content. I usually also play with that turned off because loading between lots with that off usually helps with pink. But yeah, just to show you guys, let's load into the same household as we were in before. I will say as well that I have noticed a distinct difference in load times on Linux. I sort of mentioned this at the start, but everything seems to load faster, again, despite being, by all accounts, exactly the same. And other people have experienced similar results on their Linux systems too. Yeah, here we are. Here's our house. 0 pink. Now, the first thing you need to do on Linux is do a 360-degree twirl. Do the twirl, as Jessa used to say from the Jessa channel, and it will lag a little bit the first time you rotate the camera 360 degrees. This is a good idea on Windows as well, just FYI. After you've done one rotation, then the lag stops and goes away. But yeah, you can see our lot here is perfectly happy. There is 0 pink, and then when we load back into the neighborhood, this is the point where, yeah, when I was doing my Windows playtest, everything turned into a giant pink disco. But on Linux, absolutely fine. Not a hint of pink. Everything is absolutely perfect. No worries. I have tested this quite extensively, loading in between lots, in and out, taking sims around to community lots. 0 pink. Now, as a bonus, I want to show you guys something that honestly just blew my mind, and that is that I was actually able on Linux to load my old Pleasant View neighborhood, the YouTube series of Pleasant View that I played for many years here on the channel, which was lost to corruption and to pink. That neighborhood is completely screwed. It's like the family trees are broken, aspirations are broken, sims got duplicated or like tripled in some cases. It's nuts. But I couldn't load the hood, not really so much from the corruption, more so from the pink. On Linux, I can load it, I can play it, it's fine. So I'm gonna show you that hood as well and another side-by-side comparison. And so here is the YouTube Pleasant View. For those of you who watched that series a long time ago, it's still here. I still have the hood. And yeah, these are the settings that I'm trying to run on again. Also, sorry for background noise. My daughter's on the floor and she's just making some noise. Anyway, so yeah, I was surprised that I was able to load the hood initially with no pink. I was like, oh, maybe it's actually going to work for me and it's actually not going to be too bad. Yeah, we'll see about that. So yeah, this is the hood, and I thought it would be fun to load into 113 Right Way over here, which is a big lot. I transformed this one into a community lot before I even started my series into like a museum sort of garden place. This is where Mortimer Goth and Dina Caliente actually got married back in the series. It's a good time. Again, noticing these slow load times on Windows. This took ages to load into this lot. Now, to my surprise, and to the game's credit, no pink at this point. We managed to load into the lot. However, the lag was nuts. I tried doing my 360 twirl to try to load in the surrounding neighborhood. It did not help. It helped, like, well, it helped a little bit, but yeah, the lot was so laggy. The camera was like jerking. It was really just chugging and struggling to render this lot. And I was like, okay, well, let's see how that compares when we load it on Linux. Then I went back into the neighborhood and I was completely expecting it to be a pink disco, but to my surprise and to the game's credit, it was okay. So then I thought, all right, let's try loading into the retirement home. The retirement home was always a lot that my game used to struggle with. I remember I used to have lots of pink trying to play the retirement home because it's a fairly big lot, lots of objects, lots of sims. So I thought I would try loading into this one. Once again, I really noticed a difference in the load time, and I'm actually going to put the real-time load speed up here so you can see the difference. I timed it while I was editing, and yeah, that's the difference in the load times just for loading into a lot. Loading the game in the first place, you also notice a difference for sure. And there we go. There it is. That's what I was waiting for. Holy pink. And then I tried to rotate the camera and the game crashed. So I was like, all right, well, let's see how this does on Linux, even though I already knew how it was going to do on Linux. And I took a screenshot because it was funny. Okay, and now with a special guest into The Sims 2 Pleasant View on Linux. So yeah, same neighborhood, all the same lots. I have been doing some stuff in this hood recently, so I know that it's going to run well for us, but just to show you guys how well it's going to run for us, let's jump back into the hood. I do notice the camera starts lagging sometimes in neighborhood view, but Marcus gave me a good tip just to hit the downtown button and then exit out, or change it to night and day and exit out. And yeah, so let's load into 113 Right Way. Also, just to point out, there is a resolution difference from Windows to Linux because I need to enable 1080p on Linux in order for better filming, but it's fine. Okay, and here is 113 right way, and this time way less lag, and obviously no pink. I did my 360 12, which of course was laggy. Ow, don't pull my hair. As it tends to be the first time you do the 360 12, but then the lag stopped and the lot was absolutely fine. It was rendering really well, had no issues with it whatsoever. And yeah, as you can see, it's a hefty lot. It takes a lot of memory to run this thing, but yeah, perfect, no worries. So then next test, let's jump into the retirement home. And then here's the retirement home in all its glory. 0 pink. You can see the shadows are funny. That's because with the latest DXVK, you no longer need SimNotKey's Sim Shadow Fix. So if you do download and install Sims 2 on Linux, you don't need the Shadow Fix file, okay? It'll make your shadows look weird. Doing my 360 12, it was actually not laggy really at all. And obviously, yeah, 0 pink. I can see all my Sims and everything is perfect. So that's really what I wanted to share with you all today. For me, this is absolutely like game changing, literally. Being able to play The Sims 2 with my full suite of mods and CC with, you know, being able to see the surrounding houses with my neighbors turned on is just so cool. Being able to play with less crashing is amazing. Obviously, you're still going to get crashing if you have like mod conflicts or bad CC or things like that, but crashes from, you know, memory problems seem to be gone, and from pink problems seems to be gone. I will say I've had now quite a number of people in my community on Discord pick up Linux and give it a go. It is not the end of the line completely for pink. You may still see some pink, but you're gonna see way less of it. So like, I know that Raychamps has had way less pink on Linux, but still a little bit. Lord Crumps has had way less pink on Linux, but still a little bit. And me personally, I've had 0. I haven't seen any on Linux yet. still early days for me. I've only had Linux installed for a week or 2, so lots more testing needed. And yeah, if I have more information that on Linux in the future, I may make some more videos on it. But I just wanted to share with you because I think it's amazing. I am so excited to play my game again, finally, because it's working so well. And I do also have some bonus tips for Linux and The Sims 2 on Linux in general. I did kind of mention this before, but there is a runner called GE Proton, and so if you right click on The Sims 2 and hit configure, go into game options, or runner options, sorry, you can, there should be a drop down list, and one of the options should be GE Proton, and that I have personally found runs The Sims 2 better than the Wine 86 whatever it is runner. For Racham's, it was the opposite. For her, Proton performed not as good as the other runner. So it's something just to test out and definitely see how it goes for you. With RPC settings, do not click smooth camera rotation. Smooth camera rotation did not work for us when we tested it. Lord Crumps originally selected it and his game was very jerky. The camera was awful. So don't click smooth camera rotation in RPC settings. Optimized lot imposters should be possible if you have a decent machine. I have not tested mine yet with high quality lot imposters. Again, this is an RPC setting. I could give it a go and see if that causes my game to turn pink, but I'm happy with optimized lot imposters, so give it a go with turning lot imposters on. When you configure your Sims 2 game and other peripheral programs, don't select a bit architecture. So if it's got 64-bit or 32-bit selected, chances are it's not going to open, it's not going to load. Just leave that on auto and let Lutris decide which bit architecture to use, and I find that works way better. I did mention this earlier in the video, but Linux loves a reboot. Just every now and then, if your computer's starting to be a bit weird, if things are getting wonky, if you do maybe see pink in your game, restart your computer and things will start running much better. Google is your best friend for anything Linux related. There is tons of like forum threads and support things on Google. If you're having something weird going on, try a Google search. It will help you to no end. I am by no means an expert on Linux, okay? Not at all. I am following information that I'm finding on the internet, okay? To do all this, I just thought I would share the basic Sims 2 stuff with you because that I'm starting to get my head around pretty well. But please do not fill my comments with things like, I tried this and I'm getting this error, please help me. I'm not an expert, okay? I don't know. Chances are I don't know how to fix it, so ask Google. Your other option is I do have a Discord and we do have a thread devoted to running The Sims 2 on Linux, so if you're interested, you can pop in there and ask for help. But again, by no means is anybody in there an expert. We are all beginners at this and we are all learning together. A couple other random problems that people encountered while installing Linux that I was going to bring up earlier and I forgot about. When Lord Crumps installed Linux, when he would restart the computer or shut down the computer, he was getting a black screen with lines and lines and lines and lines and lines of text just scrolling up and down his screen. That is not normal. His computer was having an error. It was something to do with his sound card, I think. You can ask Lord Crumps for more information on that. But he had to do some special tips to disable or deactivate those logs from being generated, because there was gigabytes of logs being generated and filling up his logs folder on Linux. So if you see a black screen and a little bit of text, that's usually fine. A black screen with loads of text might be an issue. My friend Double Dash, when we tried to install Linux on his machine, we had an error relating to Intel Rapid Storage technology. We managed to make the boot medium, we loaded up into Linux, we tried to install it, and then it actually gave us an error message saying your system or your computer has Intel Rapid Storage technology enabled. We cannot install Linux. You need to disable this in order to install Linux. And so we went, oh god, and we did some Googling, and we had to do some things in safe mode and edit config and edit BIOS stuff. That was a little scary. But if you see a message around that, head to Google. Once again, Google is your best friend. Finally, I wanted to say that if you do make the jump to Linux and try it out for yourself, and you discover anything about it that you think is interesting, or you get SimPE working fully, or CleanPack installer working fully, or anything, please do let me know about that. I am really eager to learn more about everything to do with this whole world, and would really like to be able to support everyone in the community to give this a go. As I said at the start of the video, I take absolutely no responsibility for whether or not you decide to try Linux. I take absolutely no responsibility for what happens to your computer if you decide to try Linux, okay? It is on you. This is your decision. For me personally, it has been amazing, and I really, really like it. And I log into Windows now and I'm like, gosh, this is slow and just old, and I don't like it anymore. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like underneath, leave me a comment, let me know, are you gonna try Linux? And yeah, I am hoping to be able to produce a lot more content now that my game's working so well. So hopefully I will see you all really, really soon. Thank you always to my Patreon supporters who are still hanging in there. I love you guys, and your support is everything to me. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.